Greetings, my dear brothers and sisters. Thank you once again for tuning into the program, and we call this Church Online. Every Friday evening at about this time we have our Friday evening online service, and we appreciate your participation, your support, and your presence. Just to be here to connect with us is very much appreciated. Let's go into today's subject, and we're going to be talking about self-discipline. Self-discipline, which I believe is a requirement for all of us in every facet of life. Wherever you might be, you got to be a self-disciplined individual. If you're not self-disciplined, somebody else is going to discipline you. So the choice is really in your hands. But let's read our text coming from the book of Genesis, and we're going to read a very familiar story from Genesis 37, verse number 18 through to 25. Genesis 37, 18 through to 25. And of course, this is about Joseph, and there's so many lessons to be drawn from this man called Joseph that are helpful for us, lessons that we can build on, lessons that will make us to become a different people altogether, well equipped to deal with the issues and the pressures of today. So I urge you to just walk this little journey with us this evening, and let's see where God takes us to. So Genesis chapter 18, let us read it together. Self-discipline, of course, is our title, and it is written, when they saw him from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. I want to underline that part before I read any further, because it's important. You see, your enemy sees you from a distance. They see you from far before you even see them, and they already plot against you. But that is not something to be scared or worried about, because you have a God who is all-knowing, who is in time. You have a God who is not limited by space. He's not limited by time. He's not limited by anything. He's all-knowing. So while your enemy sees you and you don't see them, and they plot against you and you don't know anything about it, you have a God in heaven who sees all their plans and who hears whatever they're saying about you in closed doors or behind closed doors, and who has a plan to get you out of it all the way anyway. So they said one to another, the text goes on, here comes the dreamer. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say a wild beast devoured him. Then let us see what will become of his dream. But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, let us not take his life. Reuben further said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit, that is in the wilderness. But do not lay hands on him. He said this, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him back to his father. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the very colored, of full length tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now that the pit was empty, without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal. Isn't that an amazing thing altogether? See what the enemy does. And then as you suffer, as you go through your pain points, the enemy sits at table to eat their meal, in knowing what they have actually done. This happens to everyone. It happens to all of us all the time. Don't be surprised to see your enemy celebrating, because that's what they're going to do anyway. And everybody's going to do what they've got to do at some point in time. Now, our theme, self-discipline. That's the theme today. And I want to start with the definition here. Self-discipline is defined simply as the ability to control one's feelings and overcome one's weaknesses. Let me read that again. Let me reiterate that again. The ability to control one's feelings and to overcome one's weaknesses. That is self-discipline. Some people call it self-control. I want to use the phrase self-discipline today. So self-discipline is the ability to control your emotions, your behaviors, and your impulses. This is about doing what you know you should do over what you want to do. In other words, doing the right thing over doing something that is just expedient. In other words, self-discipline allows you to focus and to persevere even if you're not feeling particularly motivated about it altogether. Now, you have to realize that while in Egypt, Joseph had the opportunity to relinquish self-control in at least 4 areas of his life. And I want to touch on these today, and that's what we're going to draw some lessons from today. These 4 areas was sexual sin, revenge, self-advancement, and extortion. These things did not die, with Joseph when he died. These things still exist. It didn't die with the generation of Joseph. People still suffer from sexual sin today. They still suffer from revenge spirits today. They still suffer from self-advancement, and that's the ways we call this selfishness. And they still suffer from extortion. Think about your own society and your own, world today. In each area of temptation, Joseph remained unyielding. He was so laser focused on resisting Satan that nothing was going to sway him. When you're locked in, my brother, when you're locked in, my sister, like a missile, locked onto his target, nothing else matters. And when you really know what's in store for you, you will defend your vision with everything. You will stop at nothing to defend your dreams. Even looking like a fool doesn't mean anything to you. It's not an embarrassing or a shameful thing at all for you. And if you were to fast forward to look at Joseph running away from Potiphar's wife, of all the other things, the man ran away from a woman, and the woman was running after him. And that's why she managed to grab Joseph's shirt and held it back as evidence of her own false accusation on Joseph. Now you think about this and you think, well, he was running from a woman. Why didn't he deal with it? Well, sometimes there's safety in running away from the temptation and the tempter. And you don't need to engage in every battle that is thrown at you. You don't even have to strive with everybody who has a case against you. Sometimes, painful as it may sound, it's just good enough to just walk away and bury your head in the bosom of Jesus Christ and let him take the burden and do the bidding for you and do the fighting for you. The real question, though, that I would like for us to really keep on our minds today is, what's your dream and what's in your vision? And what are you prepared to look like a fool for? What are you prepared to die for? What's your ideal as a true believing child of God? It was the late founding father of our own country, the Democratic Republic of South Africa, the founding father of our democratic nation, Nelson Mandela himself, who is quoted as having said, he said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Now I ask the question today, what are you prepared to sacrifice? What are you prepared to die for? What are you prepared to hold on to? And what are you prepared to fight for? Salvation is something that we all need to fight for at all ends and from all fronts. Let's look at some lessons that we can take from this story of Joseph. It's a familiar story, but I said earlier that 4 things could have tripped Joseph and scuppered the rescue plan for Israel. But we know, of course, that no weapon that is formed against the children of God will ever prosper. And as we consider all these 4 arrows the enemy was throwing at Joseph, I'd like for you to take a moment and consider the entrapments that you might be battling in your own life, in your own marriage, in your own family, in your own business enterprise, in the marketplace, right now, and think about how you are faring. How are you doing, brother? When you have to stand up and fight the devil, how are you doing, brother, in the marketplace, in your marriage, in your family, with your children? How are you doing? How are you faring? Well, firstly, there was the opportunity for sexual sin that confronted Joseph. Potiphar's wife took notice of this young, handsome Joseph in Genesis 39, verse number 6 and 7, and she then made sexual advances toward him. Her direct and brazen demands continued, the scripture says in Genesis 39, verse 10, day after day. She was unrelenting. She was relentless. She was not giving up. She really wanted what she wanted, and she was going for it day after day. And in that situation, most of us would probably have been caught off guard and given up by such a relentless boldness, but not Joseph. And that's the spirit that I'm encouraging all of us to think about today. Think about the spirit of Joseph that resisted and ran away from this woman. He resisted, and when resisting failed, he ran away with his life. Sometimes, my brother, my sister, you got to run away with your life. run away from the enemy. It's not defeatist to run from your enemy. One man said, without hesitation and being absolutely secure in himself and his God, Joseph responded with equal boldness. And and the boldness that he got was that he was going to run away from this woman fearlessly and unashamed of it all, at all. Twice it is recorded Joseph refused. Verses number 8 and 10 of Genesis 39. He refused Potiphar's wife's demands, even to be with her, verse number 10. But it is recorded elsewhere that the strength gained from enduring testing times can provide the discipline for success later on in life. And the opposite holds true as well. Without wisdom and from the trials, untested people, untried people cannot cope and are prone to do some of the strangest of things on their way to self-destruction. You don't need to be a hero, my brother. Jesus is your hero. You don't need to be a hero, my sister. Christ is your hero. Joseph's testing strengthened his self-discipline. And unlike his brother Judah and Tamar in Genesis 38, verse number 15 through to 18, enabled him to withstand strong temptation and stay true to God. He was strong enough to withstand temptation and stay true to God. This is something I often refer to as the strength of the valley, or the power that's in the valley. My brother, my sister, you do need that. Secondly, there was the opportunity for revenge. And in a total reversal of prior events, Joseph became the governor of the land in Genesis 42, verse number 6. What did he do? And his brothers were vulnerable before him when they came to him. They needed food, and they had been living in bondage to their guilt, according to Genesis 42, verse number 21 and 22, and also verse number 28. Now, this was after more than 20 years. When Joseph encountered his own brothers in Genesis 42, that where we are in verse number 7, is starting from there. And at this point, remember, Joseph displayed self-discipline and he was able to control his emotions. What do you do when you're frustrated, my brother? How do you behave? Do you react or do you respond? Because those two things are different. I pray that God gives you the spirit to respond as opposed to react. People that react break things, destroy things, even relationships. But people that respond take their time and they're careful when they respond. And that's why and how Joseph could say to his brothers in Genesis chapter 50, verse number 20, when they finally came to him, said, "But as for you," he said, "you thought evil against me. But God meant it unto good, or for good, to bring to pass," that's what he said, "as it is this day, to save much people." Genesis 50, verse number 20. So Joseph was basically speaking to his brothers who had previously sold him into slavery, and we know the entire story. I don't have time for that today, but you can reflect on it. Despite their cruel intentions, what we know is that Joseph acknowledged how God used the situation for a greater purpose, to save many lives during a time of famine. Because remember, God is into tomorrow. So you don't know, you may not understand what you're going through right now, but God is working out some good for you today for the purposes of tomorrow. It may be unpalatable, painful today. God is doing it and allowing it. If he's not doing it, he's allowing it to happen for a specific preparatory purpose for you, for what you shall encounter tomorrow. It's always the hardest thing to basically accept and understand when you're down in the valley. What would you have done and how would you have responded if not reacted? Seeing your own brothers who sold you off and actually wanted you dead, right now at your doorsteps, seeking help when the tables had turned. Seeing his brothers, a lot of emotions, understandably, would have naturally arisen internally within him with no advantage of forewarning. That's the challenge that we face. During those interactions, he held the power to retaliate. As he engaged his brothers when they came to him, Joseph had the power to retaliate. He could have imprisoned them. He could have sent them to the gallows. He could have condemned them right there and then, but he didn't. He acknowledged the plan of God. Perhaps it's time, my brother and my sister, for you to acknowledge the plan of God, much as it may be painful to you. When they came, these brothers, we understand they even feared. Your enemy knows what they have done to you and what they have plotted again. They know the damage they have caused you. These brothers knew. And every day of their lives after they threw Joseph into the pit, the guilt conscience engulfed them. Your enemy is sitting on a coal of fire. Your enemy, don't even think that they are so cold-hearted. They don't think. No, they know. Everybody who does wrong keeps a memory of it, and they know about it, and it haunts them every day. His brothers in Genesis chapter 43 verse number 18 say he wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves. Yet Joseph's self-control stabilized him. Of course, when they were saying those things, they had not yet recognized or realized who Joseph was. But the memory of what they did to their own brother was still with them. Two mistakes were possible in that instance. How, imagine this. Joseph could have taken very quick reactionary revenge steps, overstepping God's place of judgment. That is something that we are often guilty of. We overstep God's place of judgment by taking vengeance. And yet God says in his own word, vengeance is mine. This is a common mistake many of us are guilty of. Joseph could have also unwisely rushed to reveal himself before knowing if their hearts had changed. But he controlled himself. He had the ability. He did not boast. Joseph did not go and say now to his brothers, rubbing salt into the wound and say, you see what you did? This is me. You sold me off, or you put me in the pit. This is me. Now see where I am. See where the tables, see how the tables have turned. How easy it is for all of us to begin to boast and begin to self-praise. Joseph did not do that. He controlled his emotions. He controlled his feelings. He tested them while they, while he remained and retained his anonymity to them. He kept it for the very last. And it was not until the brothers had proved themselves as repentant that Joseph himself then could no longer, as the scripture says in Genesis 45 verse number 1, could no longer control himself before all his attendants. And Joseph's intense emotional display at this revelation was a natural human response of love and relief, and not accusatory or condemning. Joseph had already faced prior opportunities for revenge, and he never took any. Just because you have an opportunity to revenge doesn't mean you need to take that opportunity. Leave that in the hand of God. After being freed from prison and appointed second in command in Genesis 41:40, Joseph could have summoned the cupbearer, who had so easily forgotten him, by the way, costing him 2 more full years of undeserved imprisonment and punishment in Genesis 40 verse number 14 and 23, and also Genesis 41 verse number 1. Joseph had the power to punish this man who had forgotten about him, the cupbearer. Joseph could have also invoked revenge on Potiphar and his wife. Instead, what did Joseph do? He allowed those past trials and temptations to strengthen his character as well as to soften his heart. In your valley of trials, my brother and my sister, may our good Lord strengthen your character and soften your heart. I'll say that again. While you are going through the trials and temptations of this life, through hard times and easy times, difficult times and times that don't give you any warning, when you're up on the mountain and down in the valley, may God strengthen your character and soften your heart. And as opposed to living a life of bitterness born of his own mistreatment, Joseph chose gratitude to God. May you choose gratitude today and not choose condemnation. And this was evident in the names that actually Joseph chose for his sons born in Egypt. Joseph named his firstborn son Manasseh, possibly from the Hebrew root meaning to forget. He wanted really that chapter to just stay in the sea of forgetfulness. Some things are worth keeping them in the sea of forgetfulness. And not bothering yourself with hypertension, not bothering yourself with pressure. Sometimes it's good to just throw some things in the sea of forgetfulness and let Jesus take control. And then, of course, Joseph named, his firstborn son Manasseh. Said, it is because God has made me to forget all my trouble in all my father's household. Genesis 41:51. May God give you the spirit that was in Joseph and cause you to forget all your troubles, even the troubles that your family may have had to deal with to this day. And Joseph, may God really give you the spirit of Manasseh and the spirit of Ephraim. And with these names, Joseph actually was being grateful, thankful to God for his goodness, for removing the sting of pain. May God take that away from you, from his memory, and replacing it with daily reminders in the names of his children. Now, though in a position of authority and power, Joseph took no revenge, as I said earlier, and instead, what did he do? He acknowledged God's reality in all his life. That's important to understand. May God give you the power and the wisdom to acknowledge God's reality in all your life. That he is real, that he is there, that he sees your teardrops, he feels your pain, he knows what you go through, and he's going to do something about it. That is now, my friends, self-discipline, and it is required of all of us. And therefore, the moral of today's view of Joseph's story is that no matter the tragedy, betrayal, or suffering you may face, my brother and my sister, God can ultimately redeem that pain, take the sting of that pain, and replace it with greater good if you allow him to work in your life. Let's learn from Joseph's ability to completely forgive his brothers because he trusted God's bigger picture. May God show you his bigger picture in the spirit. Forgiveness is not a sign of a weakness at all. In fact, it is a sign of maturity and strength. Above all, forgiveness is a big sign of your faith in God, that he will take care of business for you. And the amazing thing is that this very same evil that was meant to harm Joseph was meant by God for the good of his people, not just for Joseph. You're going through what you go through, not just for yourself to be made strong, but for those around you to also benefit. Important to understand that the point that you need to see here is that Joseph doesn't say, you meant evil against me, but God allowed the evil intended to be used for good. What does that mean? Well, it's not that God merely adjusted or corrected these circumstances, the circumstances of this evil that was visited on Joseph by his own brothers. No, not at all. Rather, it's the idea that God was actually planning. In fact, he had already planned and he already thought through this entire process. And he was now acting just as heavily as Joseph's evil brothers were doing. They were acting again as God was acting for. And notice that the same word is used for what the brothers were doing. They meant it for something else. God meant it for another thing. It comes from the word hashav, which means to think about, to account, to devise, to plan, to plot, to scheme, and to regard. Now, it's a word that actually describes a process that works itself out in some form of action. And in the same way that Joseph's brothers schemed for evil against him, God was also planning for that very evil to work out for good. That's what you got to have in your mind, my brother. But God and Joseph's brothers were involved. The one was planning evil, and God was plotting to turn that evil into good. That's why you should not be vengeful, because it is in the hand of God to turn that into some good for you. Joseph's brothers intended to get rid of him, right? What did they plan to do? They intended to use wickedness, right, against Joseph to achieve a bigger purpose of their own, right? But what did God do? God took that and began to use it for the benefit not only of Joseph, but for the entire nation of Israel. God is not only sovereign, my brother, over the good choices that we make. Can I say that again? God is not only sovereign over our good choices, He's also sovereign over our bad choices. He's also sovereign over our sinful actions. Doesn't mean, when I say sovereign, doesn't mean He permits, or it doesn't mean that He oversees. But it means He retains power over the bad choices and bad decisions we make. God still has power over the evil thoughts and the sins that we commit. That means He has power to overturn all of that. It matters not whether men are sinful or righteous when dealing with us. The bottom line is that God plans and orchestrates the history of the world in order to accomplish His purposes. God will use anything and everything that He wants to make sure that His word comes to pass and His promises are realized in your life. The story of Joseph instructs us God's sovereign over everything. It is God who controls when the rain will come or when the rain will not come, and when the crops will grow or when the crops will not grow. Genesis 41:28 and 29. It is God who controls when things will stop and when other things will start, when famine will come and when harvest will come. God is sovereign over our thoughts and our dreams. And if God can control the directions of mankind and can control the weather patterns of the air, then certainly God can plan history in such a way to guarantee that His promises will always come to pass. And that's why God is a keeper of His word. Your exercise of self-discipline, my brother, must be premised on this wise, that God is sovereign. And as we close the first half of this year and open the second half next week, may this be on your mind, my brother and my sister, that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, or will ever prosper. Our sovereign God will not allow that. Rather, He will grant you the wisdom to overcome evil with good. So I say to you, my brothers and my sisters, when we think about self-discipline, I say, cheer up, brother, cheer up, my sister. Take stock of the first 6 months of this year and take the lessons from there and prepare to march into the next 6 months with great faith, knowing that He who called you is faithful and He will make sure that what He has planned for you will come to pass, no matter what the enemy plots against you. Self-discipline, remember, resists what you want to do to stay focused on the bigger things. Self-discipline is about putting future rewards ahead of immediate gratification. Self-discipline can be developed with practice and effort, and is not something most people are born with. That means, my brother, if anybody says to you, you don't have discipline, that's not the end of you. You can work on it, and by the grace of God, you will develop this spirit and attitude of self-discipline. It requires that you cultivate greater levels of mental immersion in tasks. So you give yourself to everything that is on your mind, and you remain focused, laser focused, and you allow no distractions. Self-discipline, what it does is that it gives you power over your life, whereby you can now define your own future as opposed to merely following the immediate interests and desires that may come. May the good Lord bless you, my brother. May the good Lord bless you, my sister. It's been wonderful having you on this platform today to talk about self-discipline, and I wish to God that He gives you the grace to take some of the lessons we have had today, and then you begin to implement them in your life, to make changes in your life, even as you approach the second half of this year. And I wish you great grace, greater grace at that, as you get into this new season. Next week, we begin a new season altogether, which is the beginning of the second half of this year. And I wish you momentum from God, that you're able to do much more than you accomplished in the first half, so that you realize your dreams for the year. God bless you. God be with you. May God do kindness to you. And remember, this weekend, go to church and take somebody with you to church. Wherever you might be, find a place of worship. In Johannesburg, find the King's Tabernacle at number 105 Leopold Avenue. They'll be glad to have you. If you're in Nairobi, visit us at House of Transformation in Ruaraka, and we will be glad to have you. You can find us on all the social networks, and we will kick off here in Nairobi at 9:30, and also in Johannesburg they kick off at they kick off in Johannesburg at 9:30, and here at Ruaraka they kick off at 9 o'clock sharp this coming Sunday. Be in church. You'll be delighted. You will have a very strong word coming from a leader, a man of God who's very much empowered and spiritually gifted to direct you and to direct all of us. I'll be ministering in our House of Transformation, Karen campus in Karen here in the city of Nairobi, and we will kick off at 10 o'clock. You're welcome to join us. But above all, find us on the social networks. I'll be delighted to have you, and may the good Lord continue to comfort you and to give you grace, and may his shalom be your portion from here into everlasting. God bless you, and God be with you. Amen.